This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Well, we've got more clarity now than we did when we came to you 24 hours ago. That was, of course, just hours after the count for the Alberta municipal elections had been paused in many municipalities. We knew, we were quite certain that Jeremy Farkas was going to walk away with the keys to the mayor's office down in Calgary, and we were quite certain that Andrew Knack's lead could hold over Tim Cartmell and the rest of the candidates in Edmonton, but nothing was for sure. And as a matter of fact, as we talk to you now, 2 days after Election Day, the municipal elections in our home province of Alberta, we still don't have the full count completed. But what we do have, as we talk to you, is enough breathing room to know for a fact that Andrew Knack will be Edmonton's next mayor. By the way, Mayors-elect Knack and Farkas will both be joining us on our Thursday episode. That'll be October 23rd, back-to-back from the two mayors-elect in Calgary and Edmonton. Today, we're going to get into how they did it. We're going to take a look at some of the election storylines that are still playing out. You have a battle in one ward in Edmonton that right now appears to be won by 6 votes. But if you're the candidate who's just 6 votes behind when thousands have been cast, of course you will exercise your right to call for a recount. That's exactly what's happening in Ward Sipiwiniwak for the most part. Edmonton's council is returning. The incumbents turned out to have a huge advantage despite all this talk about a dysfunctional council, and we're going to get into that today. What happened? What are we to make of all this with the only Edmonton City Councillor, aside from the mayor, Amarjeet Sohi, who did not seek re-election, and that's Councillor Sarah Hamilton. She'll be joining us. Plus, we are now in, as if I need to tell you parents, as if I need to tell you teachers, week 3 of the Alberta teachers strike. We do expect that to end, mostly because Alberta's premier has said it will at the end of this week as the fall session at the Alberta legislature gets set to kick off this coming Monday. Teachers and students will be back in the classroom, or at least that's what everybody is expecting. The teachers strike has prompted debate and conversation among Albertans, and as a matter of fact, from observers across the country on a number of fronts. Not just teacher salaries, but the relationship that Alberta's teachers have with the provincial government, on class sizes, on classroom complexities, and on the funding that independent and private schools receive in the province of Alberta. You know, this engaged audience knows that it's the most robust funding for private and independent schools anywhere in the country. But I know for a fact that proponents of private schools, of independent schools, feel like they're being piled on in public conversation through this, and we know that because they've told us that. And so today we'll be joined by John Jagersma. John is executive director. They call it AISCA. This is the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta. This is a show that provides a fair, objective platform for robust, informed debate. And I'm not about to start forming opinions or expect this audience to form opinions on what private or independent school funding should look like in this province without hearing from that side, right? Isn't that kind of the way that we talk? That's the way we should walk. So that's where we'll go today. We'll be looking to our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power for your take on this. And as always, we invite your emails to talk@ryanjespersen.com. We know that the majority of you are going to hear this show later while you're out walking your dogs, while you're on your commute home. And we want to make sure that we provide a forum for that robust debate as well. Perhaps some of you will contribute to the flamethrower, which will be coming up on Friday's episode presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. I want to let you know that this entire episode of Real Talk is presented by RapidX Financial. RapidX Financial gives you 3 easy ways to buy and sell crypto across Canada. Online with Interac e-Transfer at their trusted ATMs across Canada, or fully guided across the counter, on the phone, or in person. Now, whether you're an individual just getting started or a corporation growing its Bitcoin stash like us to preserve assets, RapidX is there with real local people ready to help at every step. There's no bots, there's no hidden fees, just genuine support from a Canadian team that cares about your financial journey. Get crypto your way, anywhere, anytime with RapidX Financial. You can check them out online at rapidxfinancial.com. We'll punch the link into the show notes on YouTube and on the podcast. This company is made in Alberta by and for sovereign-minded folks. Let RapidX Financial help you get started today. As we welcome back to the Real Talk studio, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
Now, former Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton. It's nice to see your face.
Nice to see you too.
Although I guess the new council's not, they haven't sworn in yet. I'm not nerdy on the details of all this. Are you technically a former city councillor, or do you still hold the office for another week or two?
We technically still hold. I guess I'm one of a few people not coming back, which is what we're here to talk about. But yeah, we hold the office for until the new council's sworn in. But you're in that sort of squishy in between period where, like, it's not the time to run up new charges or anything like that. It's now, you know, we've been in a caretaker mode for like a month or so.
So yeah. you aside from Mayor Sohi, as mentioned, the only city councillor from the previous council that did not seek re-election, and you've talked to us candidly, I think, about your reasons why, and there was a lot of talk, around the dynamic of this council and its performance, and we'll dig into that. I know, and I will thank you in advance for your candid commentary, which is what you've always offered here on the show. Great to have you back in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Andrew Knack will be Edmonton's next mayor. Andrew Knack is Edmonton's next mayor. How are you wrapping your mind around the election results? Where's your head at?
So we saw the lowest voter turnout, or one of the lowest voter turnouts in like 30 or 40 years in the city. So one of the questions was like, we're seeing a lot of people we were hearing a lot about how people were feeling a little prickly about this council, but also prickly about sort of how the city was growing. There was a lot of discussion in the spring around infill. But then people didn't show up. And so there's going to be some, I think, debrief post-election. Was that a noisy minority? Is that a function of the mail strike? A lot of people really rely on those voter cards, and those weren't going to go out during the strike. Was it a function of the teacher strike, or a confluence of all three things happening?
Blue Jays Game 7, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good game.
It was a really good game. Yeah. I was really troubled to hear, and we've heard from, as a matter of fact, let me call this up in real time so I can read this. I had somebody, and I reposted this on my Twitter because I thought it was this person, this real talker, it felt like kind of like speaking on behalf of a ton of Canadians, or a ton of Albertans, I should say. This was Tactical Dad. Check this out. I had run an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll asking people how long it took him to vote. And Tactical Dad said, Jasper, I voted at Christ the King School. That would have been on the 20th on election day. He said last night in Edmonton. Says, I can't tell you how many times I almost walked away. He says it's really shitty if you work a 12-hour shift, then pick up 4 kids, and then have to sit in a voting line for an hour and a half. Something needs to change. That's a punch in the gut. Yeah.
Well, and anecdotally, I was at my polling station. It's close. It's in the, I won't call it the inner city, but yeah, we're in the core, and people stood in line for half an hour. There was a man in a wheelchair, stood in line, or was sat in line, got to the front only to be told he was at the wrong polling station, and that his polling station was like 4 blocks north, and those poll workers aren't going to get that man there. That's not their responsibility. But I watched that man leave. I was like, he's not going to vote. He's not going to, he made it all the way here. He probably took DATS transit. He's not going to make it back to his actual polling station. Another one of my neighbors was, he said, oh, there's a polling station across the street. I said, that's not our polling station. Our polling station's down the street. And he said, well, that's dumb. They wouldn't let me vote there, so I just didn't vote. And I was like, but you should go vote. You need to go vote. And he like, he was funny. He was like, I was just going to vote for the dog anyway.
Oh, okay. He was going to exercise his right to spoil his ballot. Is that right?
No, there was an actual candidate who had a dog on his
I saw
sign.
these election signs.
Yeah.
It was I can't remember the name. Patrick Stewart, and the Chihuahua was saying, vote for my dad. He'll fix the city, which I actually thought were entertaining election signs. Not sure if you win an election with that strategy, but they were cute.
It got attention.
People love Chihuahuas. I just quoted it on the show. It obviously worked. For the record, for Real Talkers, they're curious to know how that unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll worked out. 1,791 votes. This is encouraging, at least to see that almost exactly half, just under 51% of respondents say that it took them less than 30 minutes to vote, which is encouraging. About a quarter said it took between 30 and 60 minutes. About 1 in 5, 17% said it took them over an hour, and about 8% said that they didn't vote.
Yep.
You decided not to publicly endorse a mayoral candidate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. How come? What goes into that decision?
I don't know that it helps. Like, I don't know that, like, respectfully, I don't know that there's like 20,000 people out in Edmonton being like, I don't know who to vote for as mayor. What's Sarah Hamilton doing? Like, I don't have that big of an ego, but I could one day maybe. So I wanted to stay out of it. I fundamentally felt, regardless of who won amongst the front runners, the city was going to be in decent hands. There was no big red flag, in my opinion. 18 months ago, the only person in the race was likely going to be Tim Cartmel, and it looked like he was going up against Amarjeet Sohi. At that time, like, very early, I think I demonstrated a lot of support for Tim. He's been a very good friend to me and my husband. He and his wife, Kathy, have been amazing friends. I think he's a fantastic councillor. I thought he would have made a great mayor. I also have a very good working relationship with Andrew. He's also been a great friend, albeit not as close. And so, like, they were, either was going to be good. And I don't have such a big ego that I thought I could, swing it.
Looks like Jennifer Rice will be the only incumbent to lose her riding.
Yeah.
Your riding, of course, freed up. And I want to talk to you about Sippy-Winiwak in a moment, because it is like as close as it gets. 6 votes separating Daryl Friesen, who at this point, could be the winner. But I sent him a note last night to check in with him. He says we're not celebrating anything yet. He says recount happens, which is now today on the Wednesday. So they're going to hang tight. Tu Parmar ran a heck of a campaign. She's 6 votes behind. Anything can happen with a recount. You know that. But other than that, aside from Jennifer Rice losing, everybody else has earned their way back to City Hall. What I'm hearing anecdotally, people walking up to me. I hosted the BOMA Brokers Forum yesterday at the West End. A lot of people were curious to know, how does a council that had, earned somewhat of a public reputation as somewhat dysfunctional, earned return tickets, 4 more years on the job for the majority of councillors. Now, to be fair, Real Talkers, not everybody said that this council was dysfunctional. As a matter of fact, the mayor-elect Knack called it in a debate the best council he's ever been a part of. What was your experience?
I would agree with Andrew that we saw, I would say, a council that was much more engaged, more, I'm not going to say fulsome because it's the wrong word, but people were individually more interested in the goings on and understanding the goings on of City Hall. There was, I think, less of a tendency for a lot of councillors to just take administration's word for it, or even take previous councillors' words for it. They're curious, investigative. But where I think, like, and we can talk about like some of the real and perceived dysfunction, but I think when you have 8 new people come into a political environment, that it is overwhelming. We know that anytime you have a large group of newcomers, I think they're really hungry for some kind of leadership and direction. And I think that it was really hard having a new mayor who hadn't been in City Hall for a number of years, who I think all of us were looking for that kind of leadership and direction. And I don't know if it's fair to say it never happened, or if the style just didn't sort of jive with what what that room needed.
I think, yeah, probably one of the things that, is it fair to say, contributed to the public perception that it was a dysfunctional council was your pretty public dust up with a fellow councillor, with Jo-Anne Wright. Everybody's heard the clip. I won't play it again today, but you exercised your right to deploy some profanity. You were obviously pretty unhappy with her, and let's state for the record, this is your first time in front of a microphone since that went down.
Yeah.
Where are you at now with some time to think about it?
So I think, well, first of all, I think the discussion of dysfunction, or the sort of rumors, the dysfunction conversation started like 4 years ago. It was a long time coming. So, I had the summer to kind of reflect on that. I don't feel like it was my best moment, but I don't regret saying what was in my heart at that moment. There was a lot of discussion over the course of 4 years about how we were a progressive council. But at the same time, I had a newborn. That same councillor, approached me numerous times about concerns that my newborn was sitting in private meetings, which never happened. There's a lot of like sort of passive aggressive, I would call it anti-feminist, or like digs that would happen. I'd say, like, as an example, you go to there'd be a movement to extend a motion to extend orders 40 minutes before the termination of a meeting. And I would say something privately like, I'm sorry, my husband's working tonight. I have to go pick up my son. As you know, having a toddler around and trying to have any kind of conversation or meaningful interaction with another adult can be really challenging. So, watching your 2.5-year-old while sitting in a meeting just isn't feasible. Well, the comment would come back, well, that's not my problem, motion extended. And then the surrogates are online saying how bad you are at your job because you had to leave to go take care of your kid. That's not a progressive council for everyone. That's a progressive council for the people you like. And that is, something that you really became clear over 4 years. It's like, we're not here to make sure that more women can get into politics at a younger age. We're here to make sure that only women we agree with can be in politics. And that's not, like, that was never my approach to that kind of, to getting more women on the ballot. That was never my approach.
Thanks for taking us into it. I appreciate it. So do you have confidence or faith, or what's your message to Edmontonians right now that are wondering if this current council, and it will see some new faces, it's going to see new leadership with Andrew Knack, obviously. It appears as though Reid Clark has won his ward, Nakota AISCA, although I know he's not getting ahead of himself either. That one looks like it's within about 400 votes right now. Actually, before we get into the new council makeup, let me ask you about your ward, Sipi-Winiwak. Daryl Friesen, the Better Edmonton candidate, a very successful entrepreneur in his private and professional life, has a 6-vote lead with everything counted over 2 Parmar. That'll go to a recount. It's the closest ward that I've seen in years. And obviously the closest word this election. That's the one that you vacated.
Yep. Yeah. And, my heart is with both of those candidates right now because I remember when I ran in 2017, we knew by 9 p.m. unofficially, and officially, I think we knew by 11 p.m. It's going to be, regardless of how things turn out, it's going to be a sticky couple of days for those folks. And I know both of them worked their hearts out on this campaign. So, it's a testament to getting out each and every last vote. 6 votes that's GOTV. That's how many knock-in polls did you do? How many phone calls did you make in the hours before polls closed just to get people out?
Yeah, that's when you're going to have hard feelings when a buddy tells you without realizing, I'm sorry I didn't make it out, pal. I was there for the Jays game, and it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, if you were that person, do not say that.
Don't tell your friend.
Don't tell your friend that you didn't make it.
Okay, so I do want to ask you then about the makeup of this new council and what you're expecting to see, and maybe a thought on the teachers' strike as well. I know you're a mom. No, it may not be affecting you directly, but for a lot of families, the bigger conversation is about the relationship between teachers and the province.
Yeah.
It doesn't have everything to do with these past 2.5 weeks. It doesn't have everything to do with teachers' salaries. There's more to it. Let me get to you in just a quick second on that. We're talking to, we're going to say now former city councillor Sarah Hamilton, our guest in studio. We're about 10 minutes away from a conversation about private school funding in the province of Alberta, plus MyJasper Memories still to come, presented by Tourism Jasper. We did want to make sure that you know, Real Talkers, that just because the leaves are falling and just because the days are getting shorter, it doesn't mean that you have to shelf your thoughts on going green with solar by Kubi. Kubi Renewable Energy, obviously throughout the year working with their customers and their future customers to provide innovative solar solutions for every home and business. There's about 1 million things that I love about Solar by Kubi. One of them is that this company was founded 10 years ago by 2 oil field electricians that saw a big opportunity in green energy. And so they started 2 guys, 1 pickup truck, and they've grown it to the biggest solar installer in Western Canada. You can check out kubi.ca, that's kuby.ca, to get a free quote today. Nobody installs as clean and efficiently as Kubi. That's Solar by Kubi at kuby.ca. Our friends at North Road Investment Council helping Canadians, successful entrepreneurs and business owners, plan not just for their business success to continue, but for success in wealth management and their eventual retirement as well. They're working with discerning families across the province of Alberta and across the country under the premise that life's financial journey doesn't always follow a straight path. Wanted to let you know in our next episode of Real Talk, that's the what is it now? The 23rd, gosh, already of October. Kerry Williams is going to join us from North Road Investment Council. He's going to join us right after the 2 mayors-elect. It's going to be a heck of a show. We asked Kerry to give us a good answer. This is purely selfish on my part. How much can you spend when you're still working without compromising your retirement? That's an everyday question that everybody could use insights on. And Kerry will bring that on behalf of North Road Investment Council. You can connect with them today at northroadic.com. Maybe you're considering a career in wealth management, or maybe it's human resources, or maybe it's scientific research. Maybe you're keen to be a teacher yourself, or maybe the sky's the limit and you're not quite sure yet. All you know is you want to kickstart your post-secondary journey somewhere that works with your schedule, somewhere that works for you. That's exactly how Athabasca University works at athabascau.ca. It's Canada's open university, which means that you're plotting out your own course, you're setting the schedule, and your only commute is to your device. Open your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University, where more than 92% of alumni say that they're currently in a job related to their field of study. More than 9 in 10, they're doing what they endeavored to do. Not every post-secondary can give you that. Again, Athabasca University online at athabascau.ca. Sarah Hamilton, our guest, former Edmonton City Councillor, in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I heard from a lot of people over the past couple of years, people that I thought would be great in municipal politics, people I thought would add a lot to council, and people that were on the fence deciding whether or not they were going to run. And the recurring theme was, I don't want to have to deal with the mess of these next 4 years. There appears to be, I don't know if I say hostile, but a strained relationship with the province. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. The budget realities are very difficult. It's not going to be an easy road to hoe. What does this council have ahead of it?
So there's a big infrastructure gap. There's big infrastructure deficits. Including like the high-level bridge. They're going to have to deal with the high-level bridge within the next 4 years.
Bring back the waterfall, or more than that?
Oh, building a new, yes, let's bring back the waterfall, but a lot harder, like replacing the bridge. What do we do with the bridge? It's an extraordinary that's an extraordinary undertaking. Financially, we're not we don't have a lot of money to spend right now as a city. We have to replenish our financial stabilization reserve. I'm afraid that if something, the scale, I think a couple of years ago, Calgary had a water main break. If something that scale happened in Edmonton, what would be our ability to cope with it? And
How about like when something of that scale happens in Edmonton? I feel like every municipality needs to brace for the worst.
Yeah. And I say if, but you're right. You can anticipate something really major is going to happen. So the conversation about that back to basics, getting our financial house in order, that I think just about every front runner candidate was talking about this election, that prevails. There's not going to be a lot of nice to haves in these upcoming budgets, because you're going to have to address these really key infrastructure issues. At the same time, our city continues to grow. People are coming into the city at I'm not going to say unprecedented, but I think at growth rates not seen since the mid 2000s. So how are we going to accommodate those folks without adding to the sprawl? And we've set artificial but nonetheless set boundaries around the city in terms of what our growth is going to be. So there might have to be a little bit of investment from council, working with the private sector to get more housing in the core. We obviously heard a lot in the spring about infill, the 8-plex, 6-plex issue. I don't know if that's going to continue to be an issue. Like, that's a CMHC funding issue in my mind more than anything, and I'm not sure we're going to continue to see that same level of support from CMHC. And of course, the relationship with the province, on not just taxation, which could end up being a real hot button issue. There's been some notions floated that they could cap the level of tax increase that a municipal council can levy, public safety, and just that relationship there in the capital city. And the last 4 years, at the heart of it, I think some of the challenges some of the tension between myself and other members on council was around my own relationship or attempt to have a relationship with the provincial government.
Let's call a spade a spade. You and Tim Cartmel were basically accused of being the UCP plants on Edmonton City Council. Is that fair?
As an accusation, not really, but as you know, I worked for the Liberal Party of Canada for a really significant election, but I am probably to a fault a diplomat, someone who I think can find common ground with just about anyone. And I think, probably naively, I felt like good diplomacy could have bridged that early in the last term. I think that was in hindsight, and now I think the political era we're in, sometimes good diplomacy isn't what is wanted by everyone.
Well, I mean, you're a good friend of yours, former Edmonton Mayor Stephen Mandel. I don't know if you heard his interview on this show a couple of weeks ago. It's one of my favorite interviews in the past number of years, because he sat here, love or hate what he had to say. And we're hearing feedback from the audience in both directions. I thought it was phenomenal. And I thought the interview would be 25 minutes. It was like an hour because he just kept going and he was spitting fire. And he basically said, and I don't think anybody's accusing Stephen Mandel of being some lefty pinko commie, but he was calling out the province, and he was also calling out Edmonton's, whoever would be Edmonton's mayor, in the form of a challenge to say somebody needs to defend Edmonton. Somebody needs to fight for Edmonton. Somebody needs to send that message to the province, I'm paraphrasing, that this is Alberta's capital city and it deserves respect and it deserves investment. And I guess now people are wondering, and I'll ask Mayor-elect Knack about this tomorrow, but people are asking, is Andrew Knack capable of that? And what will the Knack-Danielle Smith relationship look like?
Yeah, and so it's different when you're a councillor, because you can take these tough lines. You can be, or you can be a diplomat. But when you're the mayor, you're speaking for 1.1 million people, and the hopes and dreams of 1.1 million people. So 100% I agree with Stephen. You have to get out there and you have to fight for those hopes and dreams. But And I, Mandel fought, like, he called out the province routinely, and even Ed Stelmach, I believe, he had a really good working relationship, but there were times where he called out what the provincial government was doing. He called out Alison Redford, and those are two relatively centrist or progressive premiers within the progressive conservative movement. For Andrew, he's been so vocal about his displeasure with the province. Does he continue down that line? Does he take a hard stand? Does he soften a bit early on and try and build inroads? Or does he use other councillors and other relationships, including relationships with non-elected officials in the cities, like the business community, to try and sort of wrap around that relationship, a sort of multiplicity of good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. We saw some popular mayors across the province earn re-election. We'll shout out Jackie Clayton, who's been a good friend of the show in Grand Prairie. Calgary has essentially 2/3 of its council will be newcomers. Political parties didn't necessarily factor in as much, at least not in the capital city, as much as people thought they would. All of these and other storylines considered, what was the biggest surprise for you this municipal election?
I'm going to go back to voter turnout. Yeah, for the amount, for what we were seeing in trend lines over the past 2 years, not just locally but nationally, people just in the end didn't bother to show up, and I want to understand that a little bit more, like why that happened. And it's not supposing that if more people showed up, we get a different outcome. But, most people won, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but most people won with like 48% or less of the vote in their ward. Yeah. And again, I mean this respectfully, Andrew won with less than 50% of the vote. The remainder of the vote was split amongst the, I would say, next 3 or 4 candidates. So you're getting, let's say, 48% of 30% of the vote that showed up. That is not an overwhelming mandate to govern. But nonetheless, it's in our first past the post system. That is that's the way it is. The way it is.
It's the way the cookie crumbles.
And I say this as someone who also got 48% of 32% of the vote that showed up. But I would want to better understand what the rest of the people are thinking and feeling, because you represent 100% of the people in your ward, in your city, not just the people who voted for you.
I love this from JJ109 in our live chat, powered by Park Power. Says Stephen Mandel needs his own show. Says he's the best champion that the city ever had, which is interesting. Mandel endorsing Michael Walters, by the way, who finished a distant third. Jan Reimer, former mayor, endorsing Andrew Knack, who obviously won. What did you make of the Michael Walters-Tim Cartmel storyline, if anything?
There's going to be some folks are going to say that if Walters hadn't run, then maybe Tim could have taken it over the top. I always hate that coulda, shoulda, woulda stuff in politics, because it supposes that the voters who went to Michael would have voted for Tim. And I don't like to deprive voters of their agency. Some of those people may not have shown up at all. Some of those people may have gone to Raheem Jaffer. Some of those people may have gone to Andrew. Anyway,
I would say this. I think it's. I think it was certainly a blow to the Cartmel campaign when Walters entered the race for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
But I would also say that let's say so right now as it stands, we have about 92% of polls are reporting. Okay, so as we speak, as we're recording this, so we have a pretty good idea of how it's going to play out. But 92% is not 100. So the numbers that I'm citing here will not be the final numbers. But as it stands right now, Andrew Knack has about 38% of the vote with about 73,000 votes. Tim Cartmel has about coming up on 30% of the vote, 29.6% with just under 57,000. Michael Walters with just under 12% of the vote with almost 23,000. To suppose or to assume that were Michael Walters not in the race, that every single voter or even 75% of those voters may have voted for Tim Cartmel, I think might be Do I say a logical fallacy and try to sound smart? I just think it would be a mistake. I don't think it's that simple.
I don't think it's that simple either.
Tim Cartmel didn't lose to Andrew Knack by 4,000 votes. Right? As it stands right now, he's losing by about 16,000 votes. So if you take Walter's 22,000 and you need 16 of them to go to Cartmel, maybe. But I also know a lot of progressives who were keenly supporting Michael Walters, knocking on doors for him, donating to his campaign. Like I know for a fact they were supporting him. And I wouldn't guarantee that those guys, what you're listening to right now, is a violation of an agreement that we have. I don't know if Real Talkers can hear this. We'd like to welcome our friends at the Druid who are moving in below. Clearly, they're doing demolition right now. We do have an agreement. They're not supposed to be doing demolition during our show, which is why the show now has a producer Johnny's downstairs advocating on our behalf. This is just a peek behind the curtain, everybody. They're literally doing demolition right underneath us as we're speaking, which means we have one camera shot, and I'm going to keep you here for a little bit longer until Johnny's back. This is hilarious, actually. I don't mind it. Hey, I'd rather have that than nobody investing in the city.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's my place or not to announce what's moving in below us, but it's exciting. For anybody that's socialized in Edmonton over the past 20 years at a certain iconic bar that went away, it's coming back below us here in Mercer Warehouse. Should I give Real Talkers the scoop?
I think you just said it out loud.
Did I say the Druid?
Yeah.
Oh, I did already say it. It was like a mental. Yeah. The Druid is moving back.
Which is why you can't be that mad.
No, I'm actually thrilled. No, I'm thrilled. I don't want to.
It sounds like there's elephants
No,
downstairs.
they're literally tearing apart a bar below a 110-year-old hardwood floor here in the historic Mercer Warehouse, and it is making a lot of noise, which is kind of funny. But Johnny's going to do his best, I guess, to get him to shut up. But I would just say this to bring the thought back to that. I guarantee that there's a lot of like who I would call either progressive conservatives or straight up progressives that may have voted or did vote for Michael Walters that would have voted for Andrew Knack. Yeah. This was not entirely a Tim Cartmel thing.
No, I don't think so. And Michael's also a friend. He has a lot of background in sort of progressive organizing. So yeah, for sure, he would have pulled from that camp as well. I think if Michael had entered the race earlier, then perhaps we would have had I'm not going to say a different turnout, but I think some people would have had some hard choices to make.
For sure. I want to thank you for your time, including helping us fill 5 minutes while the amazing producer of this show was working to get the construction to stop below us. I wanted to ask you in closing if you're willing to share. You said that you received a really nice email from your former colleague now, Tim Cartmel. Was it private correspondence, or would you share some of it with us?
I mean, it's private, but it's not who you are when you win. It's who you are when you lose, I think. And I knew yesterday it would be a low day for him. Certainly, I sent a note of congratulations to Andrew. Tim put a congratulatory note in a chat to Andrew, but he also sent a note to everyone on council last night. And just saying congratulations to you all, and particularly Andrew, with an exclamation point for the grammar nerds out there. It was a privilege to serve with you, and I wish you tremendous success. If you succeed, our city will too. And under Andrew's leadership, I know your council will be a kind and caring one. I hope you all get to enjoy the next 4-year ride, and I hope you can take some satisfaction in knowing that while there are a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there, it takes particular courage and conviction to put yourselves out there to serve the public. Be well. Some people have the inclination when you take an L to run and hide, to sort of cut people out. And I just thought that took a lot of character. So I know he didn't have his fans out there, but like I said, it's not who you are when you win, it's who you are when you lose. And that's the kind of person I'm proud to call a friend.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for doing this interview.
No, my pleasure. Anytime.
A lot of times when people step out of the public eye, they step out of the public eye. Especially when there's been sort of a high profile, stressful type thing unfold that they're not necessarily keen to talk about. But you've always given us the inside scoop, and you've always told us what you really think, and it means a lot to this audience, I know.
Yeah, well, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks very much. That's former Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton. In just a second, John Jagersma is going to join us. We're going to talk about private and independent school funding, but it is Wednesday. You know what that means. We get a chance to step out to the Rocky Mountains here at Jasper National Park. This is MyJasper Memories, proudly presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. And there's a couple of things happening in, I always call it Canada's crown jewel, in Jasper National Park right now that we want to make sure is on your radar. It is right now just a couple of days away from the second and final weekend of the Jasper Dark Sky Festival. And they've got a ton going on. You can check out, I'll show you the website right now on my computer. It's jasperdarksky.travel. We'll punch that in the show notes too to make it easy for you. But a ton of stuff coming over the next little bit, including a drone show and free live music, the free Talk concert. You guys know Talk, that artist that just skyrocketed to fame with that phenomenal tune, Runaway to Mars. Jasper is hosting a free concert this October 25th. That's going to be Saturday at Commemoration Park. Starts at 7:30. It's Talk Live Under the Stars. I'm like getting chills just talking about this. Never mind what it's going to be like to be out there. They're also going to have stargazing opportunities. TELUS World of Science Edmonton is out there presenting Science Fest. There's also a chance for you to have dinner with former Canadian astronaut Robert Thirsk. How cool is that? Robert Thirsk's sister, by the way, was my grade 4 teacher. I had a chance. Robert Thirsk came to our grade 4 class. This guy was like in the prime of his career at the time, and he gave us all those shoulder patches. You know, those like Canadian Space Agency / NASA shoulder patches? I still have it. This guy has such a huge passion for space and an incredible perspective. You can have dinner with them at the Jasper Dark Sky Festival. Plus, they've got wonderful Indigenous programming and more. Again, that's jasperdarksky.travel. If you'd like to learn more about that, this is your final weekend to check that out. So it's a great time to make a spontaneous and impulse decision and head out to Jasper National Park for that. Plus, Jasper's also got its first ever Halloween event coming up from October 31st through to November 2nd. So just for a few days, Creatures Return invites you to experience Halloween like never before. From eerie theatrical ghost tours to star-swept silent discos, late-night vibes at the Dead Dog, which, if you know Jasper, I don't have to tell you, is the most fun you can have in the late night. Jasper will transform into a spellbinding stage for spooks and style and spirited fun. You can learn more on Tourism Jasper's official website. That's jasper.travel. Creatures Return from October 31st through November 2nd. Check out the show notes on this episode for more and to book your Jasper getaway. MyJasper Memories is proudly presented weekly here on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Well, we hope, nearing the end of this Alberta teachers' strike, although I'm not sure that the strike will end. Even the optimist in me has a hard time seeing it. Will end with an agreement that the province and that the Alberta teachers are thrilled about. It sounds like, unless there's a late development, the teachers will be ordered back to work, which I guess if you look at the writing on the wall, you would assume means that many of the issues that prompted and prolonged the strike in the first place will continue to exist, that public school teachers in Alberta will continue, generally speaking, to have hard feelings against the province. They feel like they're being disrespected. That's what ATA President Jason Schilling told us. And you have to assume that the province, that Danielle Smith's UCP government, will acknowledge that there are still some wounds that will fester, some bruises that may take a while to heal, and that this is a relationship that's going to take some work to repair. But it does mean that about 51,000 Alberta teachers will be back in the classroom, you expect, by Monday, and that 740,000 Alberta students will do the same. Now, there are other teachers and students in Alberta that have not been on strike, that have not been locked out, and that have been attending class per usual. And those are the teachers and students that are at Alberta's private and independent schools. John Jagersma is the executive director of what they call AISCA. It's the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta. John, I'll get you nice and close to your mic here. You are making your Real Talk debut. It's nice to see you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been, I guess, like a completely different experience, to state the obvious, for teachers and students at Alberta's private or independent schools. It's been class per usual for the past few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They because we're not part of the collective bargaining agreement, so the teachers continue to work and kids continue to go to school.
What's the? I'm just going to push that closer
Sure.
to you. What's the strike been like for you, though, as you watch as an observer? Obviously, you've been keeping an eye on it for no other reason than your role with AISCA.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, has a bunch of different impacts. Some part of it is there's relationships between some of my schools and the jurisdictions they work in. So things like transportation, some of these other pieces do have an impact on how the schools operate. And then, of course, more broadly, the question of the collective agreement and how the government ends up settling with teachers does have an impact in our schools, because we're funded on 70% of the base grant. So we're supportive of the public school system being well funded, because it's going to have an impact on the funding that goes to independent schools as well.
The strike has prompted public conversation on a number of different fronts. I alluded to this in my opening comments today. The relationship between teachers and what they're asking for, what they call the province meddling, and things like, school library books and what's there. Certainly class sizes, classroom complexities, and what Alberta spends, or what Alberta invests, as you may put it, in private schools. I would imagine that's been landing on your desk and you've been watching it.
Oh, yeah, it's been all-consuming for me for the last 2 weeks. Actually, I was listening to your Jasper break advertisement there, and I thought I could use that. So it's been massive in our world, because all of my schools they reach out to our association to say, what's going on? What does this mean? What's the impact? Are we going to lose our funding? Will we have to close? It causes lots of anxiety in lots of my schools, and when they're anxious, we're kind of the group they look to turn to. So we've definitely been fielding lots of those calls and actually meeting with school leaders.
We've heard, though, from public school advocates, champions of public education, that feel like this is the time for Alberta to dial back or erase, get rid of the funding that it provides to private and independent schools. They're saying if the budget reality is that we don't have enough to pay teachers what they need, or to hire enough teachers in the public system, or what have you, if the government says that the offer that they've made is their offer and there's no more to spend, that they should be looking to what they're spending on private and independent schools to make up for some of that shortfall. What do you say to people that feel that way?
Yeah, I understand the emotion in the room right now, right? And so I think that's where that comes from. But it's not a fair or rational consideration. Like if we talk about the funding for independent schools, that funding is there because we're educating Albertan children, right? So the question becomes, if we want to talk about, let's take that funding back and put it into the public school system, but what about the 56,000 kids? Like, are they coming back into the public school system with you? In which case, you're going to increase classroom sizes, increase complexity, and increase costs, because they're only funded at the simple numbers are around $6,500 for a kid in an independent school, and about $11,000 for that same child in a public school. So if we're moving all those kids into the public school system, it's $11,000 a kid. So it's hundreds of millions of dollars more in cost to the taxpayer, less available to public school students. If we take the money and not the children, think about the harm we're doing to all these children. Now, first of all, most of these families are going to have to move back. But then I think maybe people don't know about the diversity of independent schools. They don't understand how many of these kids are in schools that focus on children with special needs. We talk about early childhood service operators, but those are independent schools. So I was at an opening for Northgate Mall has an ABC Head Start that opened last week, for example. That's an independent school. At the announcement there was actually both an NDP MLA and a UCP one. It was kind of a neat little environment. And the CEO mentioned that 65% of the families whose kids they serve are at under $50,000 in family income. And that's just a contextual piece to understand. Like, there's a wide range. I understand that a few of my schools are certainly a higher socioeconomic background, but the vast majority aren't. And so these families, if you take away the funding, you also take away the choice. Those kids are coming into the public school system. I have tons of empathy. I'm a teacher, so I'm totally sympathetic to my colleagues in the public school system about complexity does matter. Class size matters. Like teaching is a craft, and when you put too many kids into a classroom, you take away a lot of the agency of the teacher to do kind of the best parts of the role. But we've kind of become a lightning rod. Like we didn't cause this problem, and attacking independent school funding isn't the solution to the problem. The solution is to make sure it's a really well-funded system, which we're totally supportive of.
Is there a difference between private and independent schools? I mean, I know that at least the majority of private schools are independent. Are all independent schools private? Can you help us understand that language?
Yeah, so as of September 1, the language is just independent school. And so it's actually used across all the legislation, all the regulations.
Is that because, private kind of is a little bit...
100%.
It lands with a thud. Can we acknowledge?
It totally does. And it gives an implication of for profit, right? And so I've tried to be saying this over and over, but if we're going to take a dime of public funding in Alberta, you have to be a not-for-profit organization. And so that private has that implication that that's not the case. And so independent's a much more accurate word. I think it's important for your audience to know we use Alberta certified teachers. We teach the Alberta curriculum. We could have a broader discussion about schooling, but it's fascinating that we don't get too worked up about preschool, whether it's what the structure is, and we don't get too worked up about post-secondary, whether it's an independent university or public university. It's only that gap in the middle that seems to get a lot of the attention.
Why do you think?
Probably some of it's historical. If I'm less optimistic some days, I'd say it's because our schools aren't unionized. That probably creates some tension. And for the rest, it's because of perceptions of other jurisdictions, likely. Because Alberta's been pluralistic and a school choice province since like 1905. Right? If you think about how we started as a province, we made a decision to say there's minority groups, there's Catholics, there's Francophone groups. They're going to be included. They're going to be funded. In the 1920s, there's the Hutterite communities were reached out to, and they made agreements to make it work. In the 1960s, they started funding all sorts of independent schools. In the 1990s, we started funding charter schools. So like the history of our province is one that says, let's have a model of school choice that's really robust.
Do you? What's the I'd be curious for some insight into your membership. So with AISCA, people can check it out online at aisca.ab.ca, AISCA.ab. .ca. You've got over 200 members, is that right? You mentioned there's the high-profile ones everyone's heard of, like Strathcona Tweeds, Mayor-Wright, and Weber Academy, and all the ones that's like 30+ grand to go there. But like, what are some of the schools? What are some of your members that people might be surprised of, or people might not be as familiar with? Give us a sense of what the membership looks like.
Yeah, a couple of different ways we can do it. So if we think about the city of Edmonton, the Elves Society would be probably surprising to some of your listeners that that's an independent school. Edmonton Academy would be one of our schools. Inner City High School would be one of our schools. ABC Head Start, E4C, Edmonton Islamic Academy. There's a wide range of them.
Is E4C the one that has like the lunch programs and all that?
Yeah.
That's the one just off East Jasper Avenue.
Yeah,
I've seen several times.
Works with lots of the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. All of them would have, or a significant number of them would have learning needs, complex needs, those sorts of things.
Okay, and why would those be operating independently? I don't know much about the background.
Yeah, so the application process to start any of these involves becoming an independent school. So they have to set up a not-for-profit society, then they have to apply to Alberta Education, and then they start to operate as a school. They need to have a certified teacher there because they're offering the kindergarten programming piece. And so that would tie into there. For the Elves Society, it's because they're choosing to be an independent school working with complex kids from preschool all the way through to adulthood. And so the society is actually a wraparound service right from when they're little to when they enter into adulthood.
Okay. I've seen a lot of people, and people write into the show to ask about this, in particular when we said you were coming on, and people were talking about accountability.
Yeah.
And whether or not accountability exists when it comes to private or independent schools, we'll say, on a number of fronts, on student performance, on funding, on even what teacher salaries look like. As you mentioned, they're non-union positions. How would you assure the public, or how would you respond to that question?
Yeah, so I was a principal of a K-12 independent school before this, so I can maybe just give you that lens in. When I'm a principal, I have to do the audited financial statements through my board that go to Alberta Education that are available to my parents, the summary of which is publicly available because it goes into our annual education results reports, same documents that the public jurisdictions write. Education plans, same ones that our colleagues in the public schools write. Business plans, we have to do annual operating plans or notices of intent. Alberta Education comes in. It's actually, we probably have increased accountability. So Alberta Education would send in field service managers, they're called. They'd be in my school for a couple of days. They'd meet with me, my teachers. Often they'd want to meet with students. They'd want to meet with my board president. I'm not 100% sure, but I suspect if that same field service manager goes to the jurisdiction, they meet with the superintendent. That's as far as it goes. So in this case, they're actually walking our hallways. They're checking our financials. They're looking at our results. If we have poor results, we get the same pressure that a public jurisdiction would do. We publicly post the summaries. If you're in education, you know about the greens, blues, and yellows, which are the good colors you want on your report. If you get reds and oranges, that's going to draw attention from government to say why are these areas lacking, kind of thing, and you have to put a plan in place to address it.
Okay. Plain Power is in our live chat. Powered by Park Power says, what does a private or independent school offer that public schools cannot?
Yeah, lots of different things. So if we think about
I immediately think of religious schools.
religious schools, would be about 35% of my schools. Yeah. So Edmonton
Is that it, a third?
Yeah, about a third. Yeah, because if we include our ECS operators, which is always a point of contention, I'm totally including them in this discussion because they're included in that 450 million, which gets referred to. They're about 40% of that funding. So they're a really key piece because those are kids who are getting a lot of additional supports in those early years. But to your point about the religious schools, so Edmonton Islamic Academy is a good example, right? 1,600 kids are going there. They're building another 1,600 student school. That's probably 100 to 150 million dollars in capital costs that community has absorbed to build the school, and they're educating 3,000 Albertan children. And so, and they're doing it, they're still teaching the Alberta curriculum, they're still using Alberta certified teachers, but they want to have religious components or cultural components or language components that get built into it. Their school gets built with prayer space in it. Their school gets built with like the whole catering center for their festivities and their other ceremonies and these sorts of things. Like I think that's a beautiful connection between offering the public service, which is education, and recognizing the needs of that community.
Jillian, and our live chat's moving fast, so I've lost her comment, but it was along the lines of, she says, I think she said, generally speaking, she doesn't have a big beef with private schools, but basically said if we don't have enough money, which is what we're hearing from the province right now amid this negotiation with the teachers, I'm sorry, she said, but we can't afford to fund private schools at the highest level in Canada. Being funded at the highest level in Canada does put a bit of a target on your back. Do you acknowledge?
I totally do. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the moment in time where that argument about saying public schools are at the lowest in Canada and independent schools are at the highest. And so my solution is twofold. One, let's raise the public school funding, and which that's why we're certainly hopeful there's a settlement here that lands that brings some of that assurance and peace to the whole system. And then there's some nuance. So Manitoba actually funds higher for independent schools because they get 50%. But it's 50% of a different formula. And so they end up at around $6,800 a kid. We're at around $6,500 a kid. It's not quite that simple because of all the different types of grants that feed in. BC is in the low 5,000s. Quebec's a little bit higher than that. So we're certainly in the upper portion of it. We're not wildly outside of what independent schools are getting in Saskatchewan, BC, Manitoba, or Quebec.
For reference, I was curious to see, I Googled before I talked to you, which the lowest private or independent school funding in Canada. Ontario is at zero, as you obviously know, and largely the Maritimes writ large are at zero. Do you have any insight into why that might be? That entire region in Eastern Canada, zero funding for private schools.
Ontario's fascinating because it's been a live topic for a lot of years. They came really close to they were going to do with a tax-based system of funding independent schools, and then it became a political issue and it didn't get passed. And so there's kind of a history there. Ontario tends to be the one province that gets run out in this discussion to say, well, look at Ontario. But if we look at those independent schools, so they're businesses in Ontario, they start way quicker than they do an independent school in Alberta. They also close way faster than they do. Like when I've been doing this job 10 years, I think we've had 2 schools close in those 10 years. So when a school starts in Alberta, it goes through a rigorous process, and once it's up and running, it's sustainable. You don't have that same assurance. You don't have the same accountability in Ontario. So there's lots of concerns about the diplomas. What kind of diploma are you getting? What does it mean? Whereas in Alberta, there's none of those discussions because they don't allow for-profit schools to receive any tax funding. There aren't really any for-profit schools operating in the province. There's registered schools, which don't take any funding, don't have Alberta teachers, but those are the vast majority of those would be Mennonite communities in the far north and the far south.
Okay, what does the rigorous process look like in Alberta if you want to start an independent school?
Okay, so you have to be a not-for-profit. I think I've said it enough times now, but either under the Societies Act or Section 9 of the Companies Act. That's step one.
I feel like people don't necessarily buy that, though. You know what I mean? That's my opinion.
I know.
Okay, so you're telling us the box to tick, and that's my editorial comment. I think there would be some cynicism around that, but okay.
Yeah, no, and I get that, which is why I'm trying to raise it, because I mean, this stuff's publicly available. The independent school regulation is out there, and if you read through the requirements of what we have to do. So we have to have Alberta certified teachers. We have to explain how we're going to teach the programming. We have to actually build the weekly schedules. We have to have all the policies in place around financial controls, governance controls, safety for students, all these other pieces, field trip requirements. All that goes to Alberta Education. They have a whole financial spreadsheet that gets reviewed. They do a review, then it goes to the minister. Then you have to operate without funding for the first year, unless the minister waives it, which is up to the minister's discretion. So you have to build a plan that says you can actually operate for a year without funding. Then we start getting funded, and then we get monitored. So I just want to give people confidence. I understand in this moment in time when public school teachers aren't working, their parents are having kids at home, they're saying there's got to be a solution, and maybe taking that money is the solution. I have empathy for the frustration. It's just not. It's not a reasonable solution. It's not a fair one, and it's not actually going to help solve the problem. It's going to make it worse.
Jim's in our live chat wondering if you can explain the difference in fundraising rules for independent schools and public schools. There's no background to the question. I'm not sure what he's curious about, but is there a significant difference?
Well, so I'm not an expert on the public school side. I do know years ago they had to start setting up the friends of the parent council because the parent council couldn't fundraise, and so if you're going to run a bingo and do those sorts of things, you need a separate group. It's often the exact same parents. You just start the one meeting, then you end it, then you start your friends of the community. So you'll see lots of those little societies operating. Quite a few of my schools are charities, and so if they are charities, then they have to report to the CRA and meet all the CRA regulations for charitable status, and for the rest, it's a lot of the same kind of things. I mean, it goes the full range. We have schools where there's families who have a long history of supporting the school, so you might get some of those kind of contributions. But I also have schools where it's the bake sale, it's the roadside cleanup, it's all these other things. Those become the fundraising initiatives.
Sure. What do trends look like in Alberta when it comes to enrollment in private schools? Is it holding steady? Is it declining? Is it increasing? Has the strike had any impact on families moving their kids into independent schools?
Yeah, so it's been increasing. Last 5 years, it's been increasing at about double the rate of the public school system. Now, to put that in context, we were at 5% and a bit 10 years ago. We're at 6% and a little bit now. So
what's that enrollment growth every year?
That's as a share of the system, we've grown 1% in a decade.
Oh, I see. So you've got 6% of the students 6% that are school aged in Alberta.
Yeah. So we shouldn't be under the impression that independent schools are taking over the world. We're not. We fill a need within a much broader system of school choice. As far as the strike goes now, it hasn't. I mean, obviously families are making inquiries, but not to get too technical, but we're after the student count date. And so these students, if they switch schools now, they're not funded when they switch schools, which makes it really challenging for schools to take them. And I think some schools still are if they have spaces, but on the whole, I don't think it's going to have a hugely material impact.
JJ says, strong, adequately funded public schools give every child a fair start. When public funds go to private or charter schools, it's equity that's sacrificed. It's shared opportunity that shrinks. Tyson says, how do independent religious schools handle inclusion of like queer and trans students, for example? If these schools receive public funds, what accountability exists to make sure that all students feel safe and supported? I remember this came up during the GSA debate, the Bill 10 thing, the Jim Prentice years. I mean, it feels like a long time ago in Alberta, but it's not exactly gone away. And this UCP government has sort of rekindled some of those flames and has the public talking again. What would you say to these audience members?
Well, the equity question is an interesting one, right? But I think part of this is that like there isn't the public school, right? We don't all have a neighborhood school that's identical. It teaches the same courses where every kid goes. We could have the discussion. I still think it'd be a very poor approach as a society to go that route. But you could make the argument if you were going to say we're only going to have one type of school, we're running it the same, rural and urban, regardless. But there's all sorts of choices. There's schools of choice within Edmonton Public, for example, right? There's alternative programs within that. So there are I don't want to single out too many schools, but if you look at Old Scona, it's a school that's obviously there's a criteria for getting into it. There's sports academies, so not only are you trying out to get into the sports academy, then you're then spending thousands of dollars on the fees to actually have your kid in what's a fully funded public school. Like I mentioned earlier, we've added francophone schools, we've added Catholic schools. Like the truth is, we've made a choice as a province that we recognize a whole bunch of different minority groups who get to have access to different types of education, and so independent schools have filled a lot of those gaps. Special ed schools, a lot of my fastest growing subset is with New Canadians. So my Sikh schools and my Islamic schools are the fastest growing schools right now. But then there's Montessori, there's Waldorf, there's sports focus, there's all sorts of different types of schools.
Did you? What was it like? You said you've been in this role for how long?
10 years.
10 years. I'm trying to do the quick math. That was right around the time that Rachel Notley was elected premier.
I was hired before she was elected. I started afterwards. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was given a talk radio job, a pretty high profile terrestrial radio, talk radio job, and 4 months later, Rachel Notley is elected, and then a few months after that, Justin Trudeau was elected, and it turned the entire political landscape on its head. Yeah. It was great for talk radio, but Alberta wasn't used to it, right. and it created a pretty interesting dynamic in the talk radio space. What was it like in the independent school space? A lot of people have pointed out, including the education minister on this show, that the NDP didn't touch private school funding at that time. It wasn't as though a more progressive government or a more left-leaning government, if you want to call it that. I don't think Rachel Notley's a lefty, but I digress. They didn't exactly come at your funding. It was pretty much status quo, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was status quo throughout. David Eggen was minister for the whole 4 years.
Yeah, what was that relationship like through the NDP years?
Fairly positive. I mean, we're nonpartisan, right? We work with government. In fact, like we do some grant work on behalf of government around teacher certification and some complexity pieces there. But so we certainly, like our posture. People don't know who AISCA is because we're not really public facing most of the time. We're kind of nerdy bureaucratic types who are working with government to make sure that legislation and regulation works for our schools. And so we worked hard to have a positive relationship because there were certainly some concerns when they came in because historically that was some positions we were worried about. But over the 4 years, I think we found a way to really work well together. I think the government recognized the financial pressures that were on in the province at the time, the space pressures that we're still facing with today, and the good work that's happening in independent schools and the kind of the gaps that they're filling.
Do you see a future, or are your schools, are your members bracing for a decrease in funding based on public pressure? I mean, talk to us about your advocacy with the province today and with the Minister of Education.
Yeah, like there's anxiety for sure. Like I stood in front of 190 of my leaders 2 weeks ago, and it's palpable in the room. Like a lot of these schools, I didn't fully cover the other part of your question. Like I have tons of rural schools, right? So like Peace River, High Level, Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray, Edson, Rimbey, Ponoka, Central Alberta, like down to Tween Valley, Cherry Coulee. Like we're not just in the cities, like we're all over the province. And a lot of these small schools, the principal's also teaching part-time. They don't have a ton of time to get into the politics, so they hear, petition to defund schools, and they go right to worst case scenario. What are we going to do without funding? We're going to have to close. What's going to happen to my families? And so we're doing a lot of work on assurance on their side to say, listen, this is an ongoing conversation. It's come up in the past. It will, unfortunately, likely come up again in the future. We're certainly advocating to government to say, recognize the value of what we're doing, not just the cost savings, which are significant, but also just the impact on families. Like these are real kids that we're educating.
I think it's Goramut. I think that's how you pronounce it. Says access to education is public. Private or independent is about limited access. And that's why we need good public education. That to me is probably one of the more difficult. I don't want to use the word defend. I'll let you use your own words, obviously, but it's one of the more the difficult things to defend when it comes to public funding for private schools, is that private schools can pick and choose who they admit. And I know that you can make the points, as Minister Nicolaitis made the points, that many of these independent schools are doing incredibly important work. Like I'm a graduate of private schools and of public schools. I see this from a number of different angles. I'm not here to pile on private schools at all. But I also understand why some people have a real problem with public funding for it. And one of those is you'll hear from public school teachers that say, listen, like we've got new English language learners in our class. We've got kids with ADHD. We've got kids potentially dealing with undiagnosed, I would even say PTSD, that have come, their families are refugees to Canada from war-torn countries. I mean, teachers just get this mixed bag. Sometimes there's 35 or 37 or 38 of them in a classroom, and private schools have the luxury of saying no to that. If there's a child with behavioral issues, they're not going to take that child, or the majority of the schools may not. They may not take the children that are new English language learners. Perhaps they would. I want to give you a chance to fairly respond to that. But what do you say to people? And I do think that's a valid concern that people have. Yeah,
absolutely. It's the one that I think when I listen, trying to be like the taxpayer, a little bit objective to it, I'd say it's the one that resonates the most with me as well. The cool part in my work is that I visit all these schools, so I know them, right? And the truth is, like on multiple different levels, schools take a whole bunch of kids. And even despite the fact that most of my schools don't get mild moderate funding. And so to get a little bit technical, and I hate using the word of a typical student, but you have a typical kid, you have a student with mild moderate learning needs, and then you have severe coded learning needs. The severe coded kids, there's some funding attached to them if they go into an independent school. But for that group in the middle with mild moderate learning needs, often like to your point, the undiagnosed ones, there's no funding there. So if I'm going to take a child into my school, I have to be honest with the parent that I can actually offer the program for the supports that are needed. That becomes part of the challenge. And yet most of my schools are doing this. And so the school I was part was a faith-based community. We don't get funded for mild moderate needs, but we took lots of them. 10 or 15% of the students there would fall into that category. And so the community decides collectively to carry that extra cost. And then there's also, like, I have schools where the public jurisdictions specifically contract with the independent school to take the child because of the complex needs. So, the Unlimited Potential Services would be a school here in the city of Edmonton where some of our most complex kids in the whole province are being educated in an independent school because the public jurisdiction has entered into an agreement with them. So I understand the accusation. It's not the reality on the ground in most of my schools. There's certainly a few schools that you can point to say, well, those kids seem to be, handpicked because they're doing academic prep and it's the only stream they're offering. And if you're only offering a really academic stream, then you're likely going to end up with those students. But they're the exception. And so that's why I encourage people to go to the websites and look at the schools. There's 250 of them. We're all over the province, and we're in the, I don't want to say the recruitment business, but in some ways we are. Like we want kids to come to our schools. We have to incentivize to families. Yes, we're going to take your children. Yes, we're going to take your siblings, because those are conversations too, right? If I take one child, am I going to take the siblings? And,
Sure.
And the schools do, because we want to make sure our classrooms are full enough that we can actually exist.
People can check out educatedchoices.ca, which is, I guess, kind of a spin-off site, or at least a resource that your group provides if they want to learn more about that. I'm showing it right now. Find the right fit. By making an educated choice, you can find the right fit for your family. People can check it out, take what they take away from it. We brought you on here so you could have a fair shake, and of course we have some questions that the audience wanted to put in front of you. Is there anything that we've not asked you about, something that you really want to ensure is entered on the record in the public discussion around what the future of education looks like in Alberta?
Maybe two quick things. One is, I'm a social studies teacher, so we didn't get into the whole history of this, right? But I do think the human rights element, right? The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, I think it's really important. Like, it was written in the late 1940s after World War II, written by a whole bunch of different countries, including Canada. And Article 26 of the Declaration talks about the access to free education for everybody. And then the third piece underneath that talks about the prior right of parents to choose that education. And so that's a document that's outside of Canada that applies to all of our countries, or most countries in the world. I think 6 countries abstained. That's a historical lens, because it's a very progressive lens. Like, we quickly make this a right versus left argument, and we shouldn't, because it's education and it's much broader than that. And so I think that matters. Like, we are best served. Think about your child who might be in a public school today, but we don't know what program they're going to need tomorrow. And so having the opportunity as a parent to have access to lots of different school options is actually it's a right for parents to have that. And I think if we can use that lens, we can take some of the frustration and anger out of the debate, and let's just talk about the great work that is happening for 56,000 kids in this province.
John Jagersma is the executive director of the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta, otherwise known as AISCA. You can check out their website, aisca.ab.ca. Thanks for showing up to do this. I appreciate the conversation.
No, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, you got it. These conversations happen with the support of Real Talk partners. We're going to get to what you have to say on this in our live chat in just a moment. That includes Friesen Brothers in 16 different Alberta communities. Your next chance to save 15% off grocery purchases, $75 or more, is coming up on November 1st, just like the first of every month, exclusively at Friesen Brothers. We want to thank them so much through their cateringbyfriesen.com. That's literally the website I used to place our catering order, which we picked up for our Real Talk Blue Jays Game 7 election night watch party, which was so much fun, connecting with our Patreon supporters, connecting with our YouTube channel members, those Real Deal and Real VIP channel members. Friesen Brothers hooked us up with beautiful meat and cheese platters, incredible veggie platters, and then those incomparable sourdough sandwiches that they have. Nothing beats a Friesen Brothers sourdough sandwich. I can tell you that much. You can place your own order today at cateringbyfriesen.com. The Edmonton Oilers with a big overtime win, one that they needed right before we're doing this show, just hours before. Good news for anybody that wagered on the Oilers. Albertans are winning big with Play Alberta, and you can win even bigger with this exclusive offer for Real Talkers. If you make a $50 deposit at playalberta.ca, you can use the Play Alberta app. With the promo code Ryan50, that's Ryan50, they're going to add another $50 free bet. How about that? A $50 free bet with a $50 deposit if you use the promo code Ryan50. That's Ryan50 on the Play Alberta app or playalberta.ca. Pathways Alliance, the 6 biggest oil sands companies in the province, working together to meet global energy demands and expectations on what the future of energy looks like. Oil and gas is powering Canada's economy. You can learn more about that at pathwaysalliance.ca. This is what the Prime Minister talked about September 10th on our show. Pathways Alliance is working in the space to provide the energy the world needs while advancing environmental innovation and environmental projects. Again, pathwaysalliance.ca. We're proud with in-studio guests like today, Sarah Hamilton, John Jagersma, to be serving a glass of the Sask. That's right. Real Talk guests drink Edmonton tap water because it's on tap, it's made local, and it's made by EPCOR. It's award-winning water from the North Saskatchewan River, which is, of course, an essential resource that shaped and sustains our city. Edmonton's tap water literally wins awards around the world. You can learn more about the glass of the Sask that we're serving here, and you can serve proudly in your home by visiting epcor.com. UCAN Youth Services doing incredible work helping young people aged 12 to 25 out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They cannot do it without your help, and that's why we're asking you this year to support the youth involved with UCAN Youth Services. They're doing an incredible job helping young people tap into education experiences, employment experiences. They provide mental health counseling without cost, and that's just the beginning. The UCAN story is a remarkable one. You can learn more about it and make a donation if you're able today by visiting ucan.ca. And we want to thank our friends as well at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation for 125 years of incredible and dedicated service to not just Albertans, but Western Canadians at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. If you can believe it, 125 years at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, and they're looking to the next 125 years, but that won't happen without the public's support. That's why this capital campaign is so important, and one that we're supporting every week with our Echoes of the Alex feature. You can make your own contribution. If the Royal Alexandra Hospital is connected with you and your family in a way, visit givetoroyalalex.org. And we want to thank our friends at California Closets for their incredible support and ongoing support of this show. They are a proud Canadian-owned and operated company, manufacturing everything they install right here in our home province of Alberta. Nobody does installations like California Closets. Whether it's a nook or cranny that you want to make the most of, perhaps it's a beautiful entertainment center, an installation that all guests to your home will see, or maybe something a little more just for you, like that dream walk-in closet in your primary bedroom. California Closets starts all of these projects with a free design consultation. Look at those Murphy beds there. A free design consultation where you can meet with one of their talented team members, get a sense of what budget you're working with, get a sense of the space you're working with, and then that's where the magic begins. You can book your free consultation today by visiting californiaclosets.ca. Tracy D in our chat, having a conversation, says, my son taught in a Red Deer Catholic school, and he could not have anything in his classroom that referenced GSAs, gay straight alliances, or similar. Says he had a kid pass him a note asking for support as a gay kid, and he couldn't publicly do anything about it. Tracy, thanks for sharing that. I will say that that's probably not a scenario that's unique specifically to Red Deer Catholic. Again, that's not an independent school, by the way. But the Red Deer Catholic situation that Tracy's referencing made national news a number of years ago as that conversation around the gay straight alliances was happening, and that's a point, interesting one to make. Gizmo says, listen, if you choose to send your children to private schools, then you should have to pay for it. And you see that kind of as a recurring theme. There's a lot of people that are saying, a recurring comment. I would say it's probably the most common comment, generally speaking, that we get in our live chat powered by Park Power. People saying, I don't have a problem with private schools. I just don't think that any public money should go to them. And then we'll hear from folks who either attended private schools or who are sending their kids to private schools who are saying, listen, at least some of our tax dollars, at least a portion of the education funds that come out of our property taxes should follow the student. You know, we're paying the taxes. They should follow our student to these private schools. And then we'll get opinions all the way in between. We do encourage your feedback. If you're kind of more along the lines that, you want to type an email as opposed to the quick stuff in the live chat, you can always send us a note to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Chantel says the illusion of choice is wild to me. Holding criteria for a child to learn the same curriculum is crazy. Stop funding special schools that limit who can attend. Darren, who joined us at our election party, Darren, it was great to see you, says equity matters because public education is the great equalizer. It's the thing that allows everyone to succeed on merit instead of circumstance. He says that's important to the right. No, it's important to conservatives, I guess is what he's saying. No. Others of you in the chat, coming from all different positions on this. Ms. KD says not all homes are safe. Kids should feel safe when they go to schools. Explorer Hollis was not satisfied with John's response, saying in the context of accountability for religious schools and the acceptance of people outside of their niche. That's always an interesting one. Real Talkers, I've said it before, cards on the table, just so you know. I attended a private religious school from preschool to grade 9, a public high school from 10 to 12, and a private religious, well, kind of a religious university, private religious university, and then wrapped things up with a few classes at the University of Calgary before attending State Polytechnic for broadcasting. So I've kind of seen the private school landscape. I've seen the public school landscape. I've seen both. I do recognize that, people will talk about these religious schools. I was a little bit surprised to hear, maybe not surprised, but I was intrigued to hear about a third of the independent schools in Alberta are religious or faith-based schools. I would have thought it was more than that. I don't know about you, but the idea that a school that on its foundation, on its bedrock, is a certain religious set of principles or certain religious doctrine or a certain belief system, would not integrate that belief system or the premise of that belief system into its curriculum and into its reality. I mean, to me, it seems to be obvious that it would, but we did have people also making compelling points in the chat here to say that, my summary of it, my paraphrase of it is that if certain religious doctrine could prove to be or has proven to be harmful to certain elements, of our population, to certain people groups, to certain minority groups, for example, LGBTQ students, then that's something that, number one, should be more closely monitored. Some of you would say stopped, and many of you would probably say receive no public funding. And I think that you can make a compelling argument for that. I remember that back in the Jim Prentice days. I remember that, the Bill 10 stuff, when that was all happening leading up to the 2015 election and all that talk. It was originally, I think off the top of my head, Bill 212. I won't get into the weeds on this, but it was a Liberal MLA, Lori Blakeman, that originally introduced legislation around gay-straight alliances. And then Jim Prentice's Progressive Conservatives wanted to take it over and do it with a government bill. That was Bill 10, and it was very contentious for people. And that was a big part of it. A big part of the public discussion on funding was that if private schools on principle will not allow for gay-straight alliances or for GSAs, then they should receive absolutely zero public funds. And that was a sentiment. I remember this. It was 10 years ago, but I remember clearly that I think resonated strongly with Albertans, and I would imagine would so to this day as well. I noticed you pulled your mic in front of your mouth, and so I was wondering if you wanted to add something to this, or if you're just making yourself available if need be.
Yeah,
I want to give you credit, by the way, today too. You're playing hurt today. You're doing a good job today for someone who's a little bit under the weather.
I'm trying.
Johnny Infamous killing it on the show today. Plain Power says, and we had read Plain Power's comment earlier today, or the question to John said, I'm a part of a board that took over an organization where tens of thousands of dollars were misspent, and said the provincial oversight didn't really seem to resonate, didn't seem to care. It said they refused to do an audit and hold the previous board accountable. Interesting stuff. Daleen says Ignite, which I think is one of the independent schools that John referenced. I may be mistaken, but I think so. Says Ignite accepts many trans or 2S LGBTQIA students, as well as neurodivergent students and high-performing athletes. Says, again, there are many different independent schools meeting diverse student needs. And Daleen makes an important point, and a good point. I say it's an important point in the context of if we want to have a fair conversation or have informed opinions on where we think public funds should go, or who or which schools or which organizations would qualify for even a fraction of public funding, we should understand what we're talking about. And there are many independent schools that have nothing to do with religion. Many independent schools that are for what they would call like the gifted students. I don't know if they use that phrasing anymore. Many of them would be for students that would have learning disabilities and many significant challenges. Some of them, independent schools like Daleen referenced for high achieving or elite athletes, for students that want to be in a full-time golf or hockey or tennis program, while also completing their studies. So there's a lot of options for parents. On the plus side, there's a ton of options for parents in a province that's all about choice. What are the new license plates again going to be? What is it? Strong and free? Is that what Danielle Smith is saying? Strong and free. But Alberta's always been about that. And whether you're taking a look at like independent and private schools, and I'm not even trying to be cute, I'm being serious, or like liquor stores, like the general premise in Alberta has always been around more choice, and not all the time, but more choice. It's probably why we've deregulated electricity, if it wasn't to help get people certain people get rich. It's part of the reason probably why we haven't had a public auto insure up until this point, but perhaps we will under Danielle Smith. That'll be wild to see if it happens. Alberta's always been on choice, and Alberta's always been very proud of the fact that it has provided more per student funding for independent or private schools than any other jurisdiction in Canada. But, I think Ontario is a compelling example, and I'm glad that John took that question on that because, you look at Ontario and other, you look at the provinces that drive Canada's economy. You look at the provinces that, when the premiers speak, people listen. BC is one. Alberta is one. No disrespect to other provinces, but like Ontario is certainly one. When Ontario speaks, people listen because of its population, because of its GDP. And Ontario provides literally zero funding for independent schools. You can have independent schools. John laid out to us it's easier to open one in Ontario than Alberta, but you're not getting diddly squat from the government.
Ontario's got a pretty good slogan on their license plate. So does BC, actually.
What's Ontario's again?
Yours to discover.
Yours to discover. They've had that for like 50 years,
and
haven't
then
they?
BC's, of course, is beautiful British Columbia.
Is Manitoba still friendly Manitoba? Or
let me see here.
I need to get my. I need to get back out to Winnipeg.
I know we're
going
to talk about the license plates tomorrow, and I saw Erica and Cheryl talking about it on their pod, and of course Erica loves it, and which was I could gamble that she would, but I don't know. Strong and free. I get it, though. I never really liked Wild Rose Country, but I do feel like it should be something about the beauty of Alberta, because that's what I love about it. Like Paradise in the Prairies or something like that would be a lot better than Strong and Free, which I know you like because it's like in the Canadian national anthem, but
I don't know if I like it.
It's not a national license plate, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really get it.
On the Strong and Free thing, I don't know if I like it or not like it. I'm kind of ambivalent on it right now. I've always thought, we are Wild Rose Country, but also like, are we really like Wild Rose? Are there wild roses
But that
everywhere?
has a connection to a party too, like a legacy party.
Well,
so I don't really. It's
but the party was named. The license plate was there before the political party.
But the UCP is their slogan not Strong and Free? Is that not on the website?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it is. So
it's been a while since I've been on the UCP website. No offense.
When I hear it, I just hear
look at that. So there you go. If you go to
unitedconservative.ca,
United Conservatives, Alberta, Strong and Free.
Yeah,
but you could also say that Strong and Free is a lyric pulled straight out of O Canada.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. It just sounds. It's like, why don't we put? I don't want to swear, but I could have been funny right there. Like, why don't we put yeehaw motherfuckers on the back?
Yeah, why not? It's
you know
Alberta.
what I mean? It's like,
you know what I think it should say?
I want something that reflects how amazing this province is. Like I said, Paradise in the Prairie. Not that exactly. That was just something.
Why don't you just have it say Berta? That would be unreal. That would be something people could connect with.
But it seems like a front to have, like, Wild Rose Country. Obviously that has a connection to a party. I know it's like it's a flower or whatever, but and then Strong and Free. I just feel like we could come up with something better that reflects this beautiful province than something that, I don't know. It seems like an affront a bit,
Yeah, I mean, it just everything feels like, I don't want to say dog whistles, but
yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
I feel like there's
100%.
But I don't know. Is Strong and Free, like, it is on the Conservative website? I didn't realize that Alberta's Strong and Free.
Yeah,
but
so they're putting their tagline on the license plate.
Yeah, they are. I mean, if they put Danielle Smith's portrait on the license plate, that might be a little.
Well, I haven't looked through all the. I know there's like a dozen.
There's a bunch of different choices you want to pick from.
But,
Chantel says, so because sometimes private schools do so-called charity work, like accepting different types of children, that's the reason they deserve public funds. Then Erica says, well, I didn't realize so many kids with complex needs are being taken care of at independent schools. That's a huge burden off the public system. Davis says and I'll do my SpongeBob impression for you, Davis. Davis says, I love the money should follow the student argument when some of the money is following extremely rich families that then add another 30 grand that most can't afford. Says that's such BS. Yeah, can I also point out, to be fair, that like extremely wealthy families are also paying extremely high amounts of taxes compared to everybody else, like just being the devil's advocate on that one. Lisa, watching us live, what's up, Lisa? Says, many Christian schools that receive government funding are accredited by ACSI, which is the Association of Christian Schools International, which is based in Colorado. She says people should look it up. ACSI partners with a Project 2025 org. If you start going down that rabbit hole, might be a bit of a wake-up call. Jillian's teacher husband, Dan, is watching us. That's one of the best handles on our live chat right now. It says, properly fund public schools, and this debate is null and void. Jillian and I both agree he's not wrong. John said that. Independent schools are in a tough position right now because Alberta is, I don't want to say paying them, Alberta is transferring the highest amount per student, 70%, of anywhere in Canada, while funding public schools per student at the lowest amount in Canada. It's not even like in the middle. It's not even a mushy middle conversation. It's literally the highest and the lowest. And John acknowledged that, and I think that he made an intuitive comment. He made a smart comment about it. It says, well, number one, they should better fund public education. He's not wrong. I mean, he's a teacher. Of course he's going to think that. Well, Scarlett says, this has been super informative. Says, I appreciate Real Talk having this conversation. She says, I'm still all in on public education, but it is important to have all the information. Scarlett, that is like the most meaningful review that you could ever pass along for our show. We're not bringing on guests trying to convince you to agree with them. That's not the point of the show. Vamp Fashion says, what if we have taxpayers... what if we have a problem with so-called public schools existing and we don't want public tax dollars wasted on inflated salaries for union teachers that are worried more about their pay than the kids' success? I feel like that's a troll comment. Respectfully, Vamp. I don't actually think, well, the teachers are union. That's fine. There's lots of union workers. People in the oil patch are union, a lot of them. So I don't get the whole union thing. I haven't seen a lot of people ripping on unions when like cops and firefighters show up to bail us out, or when nurses are changing your dad's diaper in the palliative care center. Like, I don't see a lot of people cracking on unions then. But inflated salaries for union teachers worried more for their pay than the kids' success. I don't think the strike's about pay. I really don't. I mean, for some teachers, it's probably about pay. But it strikes me, I don't know about you, Johnny, when we had, whatever it was, we're debating the number of teachers that were outside our studio, while the Premier's State of the Province address was going, 5,000 to 10,000 teachers, let's say. What were the signs that they were holding, the placards they were holding? Like, very few of them were like, pay me. And the majority of them, I saw a great one that had the school zone speed limit sign. It said maximum 30. And it said that should be for school zones, not classrooms. It should be maximum 25 or whatever. But like almost all of the placards, almost all of the signs were to do with learning complexities and class sizes and opportunities for the students. There's not a lot like, I don't know, to be honest with you, and you guys know that there's a letter carrier or a retired proud letter carrier in our family that I just respect so deeply. And I always try to be careful when I'm talking about Canada Post because I know how proudly he served his communities. But like, this is so different than the Canada Post strike. The Canada Post strike, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we've had different sides on the Canada Post strike in the studio right now, but letter carriers are trying to get like a better deal for themselves and more job security, which I guess I don't blame you for because that's the career you've chosen in an industry that is dwindling and is under attack, and there are competitive private entities that are providing better services than Canada Post. And right now it just feels like the letter carriers and their union, CUPW, I think it is, respectfully, and I apologize, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I think they have their heads in the sand a little bit. Like, they're like, we're not working overtime, we're not going to work weekends, and we're not going to allow part-timers, and we're not going to allow this. It's like, I'm sorry, who's calling the shots on this? Like, DHL and FedEx and Amazon Delivery and everybody else is providing services that compete with you, that are open on the weekends, that are cost competitive and everything else. And this is all about you trying to grind everything that you can out of a government that's accountable to the public, because Canada Post costs Canadians, like, operating at a deficit in the billions. It's a completely different reality with the teachers. Not that what they have in common is that they cost billions, but they're completely different to me. And I think that the letter carriers are a little bit naive right now. And I'm actually, I'm sorry, not sorry on that. But I really do feel like teachers are fighting for the students on this one. That's what it feels like. It's why I think that this was not just about salary. If it was just about salary, I have a sense that they could have hammered out a deal a while ago.
Oh, I agree. I think if someone came to me and was like, hey, I'm going to make your workload like a quarter less at your job, I wouldn't even think about a raise. I'd be like, this is great, right? And I think that's what teachers are afraid of. They're also like seeing the writing on the wall with the emerging population increase. They know that if they sign something, 37 will turn to 40 and 43. And, in 5-6 years, it'll be 50 kids in a classroom, right?
Yeah. Jillian says, Jasper, if you're rich, you should pay more taxes because 99% of the time your wealth, benefits essentially from a well-functioning, well-educated society. I'm not saying don't tax the rich. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that, just to say that somebody can afford to send their kid to private school so they don't deserve to have some of their property taxes follow the students in their class to their school. I'm just saying there can be a compelling argument for that. For what it's worth as well, our kids are publicly educated. That's important to our family. So I try to tell you guys where I'm coming from on this all the time when appropriate without surrendering private family information, but our kids are publicly educated. So Ken, Super Chat Ken, says, I'm looking at investing, says he's looking at investing in a 3D printer for several reasons, but none better than printing a Forever Canadian license plate border to cover the strong and free garbage. I like that, Ken. What's the rule when they roll out the new license plates? I guess you have to transition, like when your next registration. I don't know, because I'm old enough to remember.
Oh yeah, next time you register,
you weren't here.
You don't have to
but Alberta used to have, and I love them. I have one up in my garage. We call it the cabin, the black and yellow license plates, like Bumblebee license plates. Basically, they were like these old school. They look super cool. Yeah, they look terrible on the back of cars, but they look super cool alone and framed. And then I remember when Alberta transitioned to the red, white with the blue text, and then eventually, but you'd see the old school vehicles with the yellow and black plates for a while. I would imagine at some point we're all going to have to switch over, right?
I know we'll have to, yeah. But this is already decided, like it's going through. Those are the new plates. We're just working on an image.
I'm going to be honest with you and real talk here. The license plate story is at the bottom of the list of things that I care about. I'm going to be honest with you, real talk. I'm not even following that story at all because that's just a distraction. It's ridiculous. People were pointing out that, teachers are on strike and Danielle Smith is rolling out new license plates. If you can't stand Danielle Smith, you're going to see that as an affront to teachers. You're going to see that as the government gaslighting the teachers, trolling the teachers. And if you're a big fan of Danielle Smith, you're going to say, well, government must continue to operate despite the fact that there's a teacher's strike. And if this was on their docket of things they were going to accomplish this fall, then they're going to continue to look to accomplish those things. And the truth may lie somewhere in the middle, John.
I'm just glad they have a big enough team that they had time to sort this plate thing out with, all the other stuff going on here in the province. Elections, teacher strike. I'm glad they saved some time for license plates, Ryan.
Okay. See, there's always one in every room.
Can we talk about Jake Wallman?
You want to talk
and
about
his
Jake
celly
Wallman
last
before
night?
we
Or
wrap?
no, I'm just
sure.
kidding.
No, I did. Do we have it? Do you have video of it? I don't have it.
You can click it quick.
I'm going to tell you the truth.
It's just great because they needed that win. Connor got his first goal.
Bouchard got his first assist.
Assisted by Bouch, which, it seems like they all got the monkey off their back in a single game to end a road trip, which they won in overtime, which their new guy they signed for 7 years also hit the old, what's the celly called? It's called the Wham. Yeah, that's what he hit that time. Oh. But Wallman's
kind of famous for great cellies.
Well, he's famous for hitting the gritty, right? Whenever that's like a constant gif whenever you're looking at NHL gifs on your phone. But yeah, he's having fun. Connor gets the monkey off his back. Bouchard does too. It was a great game.
In closing, just because at the end of the episodes, and this is oftentimes our favorite part of the episode, respectfully to our guests and all that jazz, when Johnny and I just kind of shoot the shit with you guys. A lot of people are commenting on the license plates. So here's a few more.
They are.
TD says, I didn't make a license plate vote at all. I haven't gone online to vote on them at all because we know damn well they're going to do whatever they want and not what the votes say. Probably true. Others of you are saying, Ken says the license plate story just shows you the hypocrisy about making excuses about the upcoming deficit while spending on the virtue signaling bullshit. There you go. Chantel says, I like the idea behind the new scenery on the plate, but based on principle, I don't want a vanity plate. Some people are saying that if you have the vanity plate, like, eat my dust or whatever, it's got to be 7 characters.
Like the Oilers one? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but they said it won't have the slogan on it, so there you go.
Okay.
Ms. Katie says if she ever has to get one of those plates, she'll cover the strong and free text. Others are saying, Explorer Hollis says this is a total distraction. I voted for the plain Jane white with red letters, and I will give it 0 more thought. Yeah, that's even more than I've given it already. Erica says it's a lot of wasted energy being angry and resentful toward people with money. Maybe transfer some of that energy into making yourself successful instead of whining and complaining. And Bustion says, Jasper, you got to bring someone on to dissect the ridiculous MH Care scandal report. This was that, I mean, if Ambustion is correct in referring to the MH Care scandal report, more commonly known as the UCP playoff luxury box scandal, or the AHS procurement report scandal. That's something that we're following. We got a long list, Real Talkers, and of course, we're not going to do 6-hour episodes every week, but we always, like just like Ambustion did, want to hear from you and what you'd like to hear on the show. We have had to shuffle things a little bit just based on availability of the guests that we wanted to make sure we get on the show, so I'll let you know what's coming up here as we wrap this episode right now. Tomorrow, that'll be Thursday, the 23rd of October, we will be joined by Edmonton's Mayor-elect Andrew Knack in studio right out of the gates. You can watch that at 8:30 Mountain Time live or later on demand. And then Calgary's Mayor-elect Jeremy Farkas will join us before 9 a.m. Back-to-back Jacks in the capital city and my hometown of Cowtown. And then on Friday, the return of our friends, the co-hosts of The Discourse. Erica and Cheryl will join us to wrap up what has been a busy week ahead of fall session at the legislature. We hope you'll join us.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjaspersen.com.